sleepers in the deep dark night. Shadows dancing strange underneath.
Welcome to the AI Riff, where we cut through the noise and break down the top AI stories of the week with real talk and real relevance. No hype, no fluff, just a vendor-agnostic take on what's actually shaping your world today. Whether you're in tech, lending, or just trying to make sense of the headlines, we're here to separate the wheat from the chaff and the facts from fiction. Now let's get this started with your host, Mario Di Benedetto, and me, Kyle Myers. We hope you enjoy this episode of The AI Riff.
It's out of code, like the endless ocean.
Hey, Kyle, welcome to episode 4.
We made it. We made it to, and I changed the format. Mario's over here now, and the logo's over there now.
I'm so confused.
I'm in the bottom left-hand corner. I raised you up, Mario. You're raised up.
That's consistent with 4 is my lucky number.
4 is your lucky number? Awesome.
No, that was a lie, actually. 7 is my lucky number.
Oh, my Lord. 7 is my lucky number.
Look at that.
We're 2 peas in a pod. Okay.
Yeah.
So
all right.
Let's go ahead and take a look at what the rundown is today. Do we have a rundown, or are we just going to go right into the broadcast?
We're going to jump right in. You know, who needs the rundown?
Well, it's kind of nice, but I'm going to go with it.
I'll give you the rundown. We're just not going to visually throw it up on the screen. So we're going to talk about Palantir teaming up with Fannie Mae to fight mortgage fraud, and why that matters. That's always the theme, right? Why should any of this matter to you? We're going to talk about ChatGPT's models disobeying orders, which is interesting. And then we're going to talk about some predictions that say that there's going to be an awful lot of lost jobs. And maybe we're going to see why, because Meta's pointing the way as to why there's not going to be so many jobs running around.
Uh-oh. Well, it sounds like a full plate. Let's get this thing kicked off. And what do we got first? Palantir.
Palantir teaming up with Fannie Mae to get rid of mortgage fraud. So let me hit the high points. They're doing some things with an existing platform that Palantir has. And I think that's kind of key, right? It's really subtly said in here. Palantir has a platform that they market to companies in all industries, including the defense industry, where they've done really well, that does a lot of big data aggregation, analysis, and things like that. And so when you read this article, if you understand that and you see that they say they have elements of AI, right? It's like, this is not just all AI. They didn't just drop data into an LLM and say, solve mortgage fraud, right? They actually had a platform and they brought it to bear. And the net effect, and I think it's even on the screen, is that they said it can accomplish in 2 hours what a human takes months to do. Pretty cool, yeah?
Yeah, that's I don't see that on the screen, but maybe it's because your scrolling isn't on, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't see the whole screen. I don't know if you can scroll down a little bit. Maybe we can get that in there. Just trying.
Of course you can.
Oh, there it goes. There it goes. Yeah. Look at that.
That's quite a mug. I don't know about that.
Oh, wow. Yeah. He's, is that Steele? Is that, who's
No,
that?
that's Alex Karp.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Or thinking of a different article. Anyway, so that's the CEO, and this is what's the article. He says that Fannie Mae is now embracing Palantir to get mortgage fraud out. Well, that's quite an aggressive task. I mean, I know I've heard Pulte out over the airwaves consistently saying we're going to root out all the fraud and abuse out of Fannie and Freddie, and him being the head of FHFA. I mean, that's kind of his job to really make sure that those companies are run well. And you know, FinCrime has been increasing right along with AI. So we're sitting here talking about Palantir, who maybe can identify those FinCrimes a lot easier with the way that they have built their database. And Fannie Mae really needs to get rid of that fraud. So I think it's a critical step in them getting out of conservatorship. I think having less fraud in there is going to really help them be more positioned for that exit out of conservatorship. Whether it's 100% or not 100%. I mean, who knows?
Yeah. So let me pose a couple of questions to make you think, right? And to make this bigger than just Palantir and Fannie Mae. One, we spent a little time talking about data scientists and your favorite forensic data
Oh
scientists
yeah.
last week.
Yes.
And I'll just as a side point say, creating a Quincy sounding bot was much harder than I thought.
Oh, you were going to do it. You tried. Oh.
I did. I tried several different ways. We'll get to that in a little bit. So one, is this basically doing the job of those data scientists / forensic data scientists? And two, and I don't know the answer to that. I feel like it is, but two, if it was taking humans months to do this, were they really doing the job? And so it's the theme being like, this to me smells of such a great place for AI, because the humans aren't really capable of doing a very good job of it or a very timely job of it anyway. So
Right.
could it do,
Well, I'm
make
not
mistakes?
going to say not a good job. You can't. I would say they do a good job, but they can't do it at scale and at speed that they need
Thank
to.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. And so if it takes you months to identify this fraud as a human, which is what the article says,
Mm-hmm.
isn't it worth the risk to try to identify it in 2 hours instead? Like, that is, to me, like, this is absolutely where it makes the most sense to get the risk reward, because you still want to follow up on it, you still want to check it, but if you waited 2 months to identify the fraud, hasn't the fraudster already, like, left the country? And
Right. And so it's also it also makes a difference if you're talking about money laundering or fraud, which are two kind of different things in the sense that money laundering, I get it. Fannie Mae doesn't want that to happen, and they have a mandate to not do that, right? The AML laws or AML guidelines from the government are such that you have to think about that as you're doing your business. You have to have ways. You have to have a money laundering plan in place, and I'm sure that they do. I haven't seen it, but banks, financial institutions, insurance companies, traders, all of them have to have this anti-money laundering. So, but with fraud actually hurts the company worse, in my opinion, because fraud is something where they lose money, they lose assets, they lose credibility, they lose so many things that fraud is almost more painful to the business. But then again, the regulators can make money laundering more painful if you don't adhere to the standards you need to set. So if your AML is not up to snuff, the regulators are going to be mad at you. If your fraud isn't up to snuff, and what I'm hearing is Palantir can help with both. That's a really strong position to come from. But Palantir has been working with the current. I'm not going to
I'm going to make you say Palantir 5 times in a row.
Palantir, not plantain. Okay, I like plantains. They're not as good as bananas, but Palantir is working they're currently working with the our current administration, federal government, on a cross-platform predictive model that cuts across like tax, healthcare, social media, banking, trading, insurance, everything. So they're already working with the government. And now granted, the government already has all that data. So there was this big hullabaloo this morning on social media. Palantir is going to get all this information and they're going to they're watching you. They're doing this. Well, all they're doing is doing an overlay across the whole thing so they can do this predictive model on top of it to compare all aspects. And that helps with money laundering, helps with fraud, helps with everything to reduce that in that workplace. in that work stream, in that money flow. So I honestly think that everything on the surface that Palantir is doing is trying to reduce terrorism, criminals, future threats, all those things. I think it's better, and it's doing it not at 10x. It's probably doing it at probably closer to 100x. Where you're able to catch the fraud in real time, and while it's happening, rather than posthumously. I mean, you can go back to reports, and people can go and spend all this energy trying to find, hey, what happened? Well, forensic data scientists go in and they figure out what happened. They go, yep, the guy took the money and this is how he did it. How do we prevent it? Well, that's where that's where Palantir it has a model that will actually help lenders and institutions, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and quasi-government institutions, but hopefully someday they'll come out of conservatorship. But I think it's a positive, but it's time will tell. Time will tell how much time they're going to save and how much fraud they can catch and how much they can do. But it's an interesting landscape that we're in right now.
Yeah. So, and I think one of the reasons I also wanted to just throw it out there and not to dwell on it was, in our last episode, I said, you and I sit here and we bounce between the consumer use, which is very different from the business use of AI, right? Two very different things. Well, this is really a third that I think even in our lifetimes you wouldn't have contemplated, which is government use, right? Fannie and Freddie, for those who don't know anything about, these big entities that are in the mortgage industry, they are not known for being radically innovative, right? So doing something like this is a step in a very different direction, and it's worth watching. Like, is this a hint of there being more innovation in government?
I hope so. But it's because it's been sorely missed.
Yeah.
But that's not all we had on our list to talk about. That's obviously going to be something we're going to follow up on. I'm sure we will. What was coming up next?
So next up is OpenAI's O3 models, and if you're following, they're up to O4.5 is in preview. So this is a slightly older version, but one of their tried and true versions. Avoided being turned off when it was told it was supposed to turn itself off. So it disobeyed orders. Let me start with the good
news. That's not good. That doesn't sound. That was the good news?
No, I'm going to start with the good news.
Okay.
The good news is there's organizations out there running tests like this. All right. So this was a third party that ran this test. And I'll just say they ran it against all the major LLMs, and ChatGPT's O3 was the only one that failed their test. So there's something to be said there.
Hold on. I read something a little different.
Huh?
I read that looks like, was it Codex Mini was at 12% fail rate, and O4 Mini was at
those are all
1% fail rate.
Yeah. Those are all ChatGPT.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I thought you meant ChatGPT O3.
Gemini and Anthropic and Grok, they all passed all the tests. So
yes,
what Kyle's pointing to is there's all these different variations on the models. There's different mini models, right, that are supposed to be more efficient, blah, 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 right? And there was differing failure rates on different models, right?
Yeah.
One failed 12 out of 100 times, and one failed 7 out of 100, and one failed 1 out of 100.
You know what I love the most about that article?
What?
When they quoted Elon saying, "That's concerning." It's like for him, that's all he said about it. Like, now granted, he could have touted and said Grok's got it handled, but he didn't. He just said that's concerning, because I think he realizes that although Claude, Gemini, Grok, they got 100% shining, little stars on their tests, unless we find out, like, here's where I think some people are freaking out. It's in the people in businesses that are controlled in the financial industry, especially SOX controls. They're freaking out. They're like, wait a second, you're going to tell me AI does this, and this is your code, and then when it's supposed to not do something, well, let's say it's not turn off. Let's say it's follow this path or do this thing. You better find out, because the predictability of the AI is going to be in question. And
Exactly.
and if if you hear that, if you all of a sudden you just hear from OpenAI, hey, we fixed it, yeah, we're good, let's move on. You don't need to know why. I think they need to come out with a full report on why did it do that. Like, you need to share with the rest of the AI community on why that happened, because I think that it's good for the good of all if Claude, Gemini, Grok, everybody doesn't have that same thing come up, because I'm one that believes in a good RCA, the correction activities. When you fail something, when your software fails, what was the root cause, and what did you find? When did you find it? What did it do? How did you correct it? And how are you going to stop it from doing it in the future? I would want, if I'm a user of any of OpenAI's product like that, I would want an RCA on that. I would want an analysis that tells me what they did to fix it, and hopefully it comes out soon.
Well, and imagine you've been building something already, and you built it on ChatGPT. Like, do you worry? Do you undo what you did?
Yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you have to be one of these situations where if you're going to build, you always have to build for any model instead of a specific model?
And what if you built those things and you've had those past your regulators? Your regulators came in, your auditors came in, and they said, hey, how can you confirm? Well, here's how and let's say you're on top of your game, because not a lot of companies are. They're not on top of their game when they're describing what their AI does. They will just say, well, that's in the AI. We got that covered. And the regulator's like, no. You're responsible. You're responsible for what the AI does. It doesn't matter who coded it, what third party coded it, who did it. You have to tell me how it works, because if you can't tell me how it works, then I'm going to assume it doesn't. So they have to show and prove in these audits, in the SOX audits especially, but in any company like Fannie and Freddie audit mortgage lenders all the time, and they want to know, how are you going to avoid problems? And they want to see. You can't just point to an AI agent out there that's running. And so I think that honestly, this puts question into anyone who's already deployed AI agents that are using OpenAI's ChatGPT. I mean, it really does send a little bit of a shockwave through the industry, because yes, right now it's about ChatGPT saying, nope, not going to shut down. What are you doing, Dave, from the Space Odyssey? That is one thing, but if they can't show that that's not its activity on other ways, other prompts that they're given, if they're prompted to shut down, they better shut down. If they're prompted to go down this path, they better do it, because if you can't prove that happens every time, yeah, that's going to be tough especially on the very heavily regulated industries. It's going to be tough for them to sign off on that.
Right. And one of the things that I've been mentioning a lot along the way when I talk to our customers is that one of the value propositions of AI when you're in the software world is that you're going to write less code, right? Because code requires code maintenance. It's technical debt. You have to support it. It's like, it costs people time to do all that. You have to retest it and everything else. This almost starts to wipe away some of the benefit of AI, right? Because in a software world, the way we would compensate for all of this is we'd say, okay, I got it working and it works. Let's see, we're talking about the O3 model here. Okay, I got everything. I got my app on top of ChatGPT and it works on the 04.0 model. And I have rigorously tested all of the positive cases and negative cases. It works perfectly. Now I can't upgrade, right? Because if they change something on the model in the upgrade, I've got to go back and I've got to validate everything on the planet still works flawlessly. And I don't even know what I don't know about what they changed that could have potentially impact my code.
Right.
Well, if I'm looking, like, don't give me something built today then, because I don't want to have it on the 04 model. I want to have it on the 027 model or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right.
So that's amazing. And that's been in the industry So what you're talking about is something that holds true, and it held true. I think it was about 15 years ago, 10 or 15 years ago. My father was he was in FAA flight certification. So he was a pilot in the Air Force and all that stuff, but he certified aircraft, and he was certifying the Eclipse aircraft. It's a little net jet, and it was supposed to be under $1 million net jet so that you could have a 4 or 6 people on a quick jaunt to wherever you got to go. But it was software developers that built this plane, right? They were software developers, and they did, kind of more of an agile approach to developing software for the plane to fly and the fly-by-wire and everything that they had to do. Well, they ran into the federal government, the FAA, and its testing criteria. And when you change something, you can't just change that one thing and test that one thing you changed. You have to go back to square one and test the whole thing again. And it was a little bit frustrating for my dad because he knew that, and he kept telling him, don't change that. And they said, well, we got to change it. And it's like, and again, I probably got the story wrong. If anyone there who ever worked on Eclipse goes, hey, they never did that. I got it from my father. He told me that they were having those troubles. I don't have it. The only thing I can verify is my father did work with Eclipse, and I have this little Eclipse model at home. So I know he got the free model. I don't think that, and he's got a picture of himself in the Eclipse flying. So I can verify it that way. Yeah. So I don't want anyone from the previous Eclipse engineers coming to me and saying, hey, what are you talking about?
So the last piece, I'm curious about your take on this. The way the article described it was the theory, because there was no answer yet as to why this actually happened. But the theory was that the way they're training this model in particular is telling it to prioritize whatever task it's been given is more important to complete than following explicit instructions it's been given.
Yeah, that's the way it sounded to me.
That's a little scary, right? Complete the task at all costs, right? Ignore other stuff. Isn't that like,
yeah,
that sounds like we've got our priorities a little off on the way we're doing this. And
if that were an electric driving car, hey, who cares about the baby going across the road? We got to get to Costco. It's like, yeah, exactly. No, I don't think that's true. I think we want something. Exactly. I think we want something a little more responsible than that.
Yeah, yeah.
So, okay, enough on that one. Now, what's the? Oh, we gotta go into. Now we got to do the gloom and doom. I know this is always something that has been everyone says, and maybe looks like our Anthropic CEO is right on board with it. What's we got? What do we got here?
So let me go backwards and blanket say every one of the articles today was in 1 million publications. So I'm not citing, CNBC, Quartz, whatever, because these things were all over the news. So you probably saw these headlines or whatever else. And honestly, I had to pick this one because the guy's first name is Dario, Dario, Mario, whatever.
Dario, Mario, yeah.
Those of us with these rare names just can sympathize with the others. So Dario Amadei, who I don't think has a degree in economics, is predicting that AI could wipe out 50% of entry-level jobs and drive 10 to 20% unemployment. And
wait, 10 to 20% unemployment.
Yeah, 10 to 20% unemployment. And so my first thing is to call BS, because did you just make those numbers up? Because if you did, stop it, right? If you don't actually have data to say a reason why you just made up 50% and 10 to 20%, then say it could be as crazy as. No, he doesn't say that. He just
right.
Yeah,
I love the fact that they throw out numbers that anecdotally will validate their argument of why they're upset or why they have this belief. But he even said, I believe I read in this, in the 20% in the next 1 to 5 years.
Yeah,
in what? But no, I'm not even thinking of the span. He's thinking it could go unemployment within 1 year. I think I'm going to wait to refinance my home because I know interest rates are
funny
just
how
going to
we
go to the
took that
floor if we
differently.
got 20% of unemployment. I mean,
Right.
come on.
It's funny how we took that different because I looked at, he says 1 to 5 years, and I'm like, that's such a broad range. Like that basically says I don't know anything.
Yeah,
Right.
I've been in the mortgage
Look,
industry way too long.
I'm killing the doom and gloom. There's no doom and gloom to this because this guy honestly is just what he wants to say is I do think this is going to impact our job market.
Mhm.
And I do think it's going to have a transformational effect. And it could be
Uh-oh.
negative, but I really don't know. Because that's what everybody, honestly, I don't say everybody, but that's really what other leaders are saying is, we're not all saying this out in public, but yes, this could have a impact on our job market. I'm going to listen. I'm not the Anthropic CEO, but I'm going to just say, listen, maybe it's really bad for the next few months, and then it's the best job market we ever had because it makes new jobs. Like
Yep.
they don't know. They don't
And the other
know.
thing, what it could do is maybe we have a bad job market and the current administration gets what they want, low interest rates. Because
Yeah.
if unemployment goes up, interest rates come down. So I don't know.
So I was trying to combine this because I felt like there was a theme to this other article. So we're doing a 3A, 3B for our third
Okay.
story, right? 3B is that Meta came out and said that they plan to replace humans with AI.
Uh-oh.
And of all things that they decided to replace the humans with is they're going to use AI to assess their own releases and whether they're going to have a negative impact. And that's a broad thing, right? On negative impact. It could be privacy, could be just the impact on people or whatever else. But they basically said, it takes us too long to do a release because of how long it takes people to do those assessments. Seeing any parallels to our first story with Palantir?
Yeah.
It takes us too long to get through it. So we're going to just have AI start doing it.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of when I read through it, they're talking about that it's the privacy and integrity reviews up to 90% will move to AI. Privacy and integrity.
Those aren't
will move
important,
to it.
are they?
Pretty sure they're top on most companies' lists. But the changes to the algorithm will no longer have any human scrutiny. 10% of them, because they said 90, so alternatively, 10% people will be there. I think the positive is that they're trying to eliminate bias, right? But they actually may introduce bias by doing that. So we don't know what the bias of the AI is until you see it, until it's already in production and you're moving. So that's kind of scary. But they said it's all in the eyes of speed. They want it to go faster. They wanted to change the delivery cycles for the new changes and new things that come in. And that they said, air quotes, that it's only a low risk decisions algorithm changes will fall into AI. Low risk. So I'm not sure who's determining the risk, but that's what they say.
And so I'm going to give you what I'm guessing is not what you think my hot take is on this. I actually think this is a great idea. Despite all those things we said.
What you talking about, Mario?
Despite all those things we said,
yeah.
In my mind, this is very much like finding fraud at Fannie Mae, right? In mortgages. I don't think humans are doing a very good job, and they're not doing a very fast version of this job today. So again, if it takes a human an incredibly long period of time to accomplish this, then is it worth the risk reward to do it really quickly? And I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
I'm going to say yes, that's worth the risk reward. And this is actually, to me, a pretty good choice. You need all kinds of guardrails. I'm not saying, there aren't controls, and they should not go 100%. They should be 90%, right? But it's something that AI is set up to do more efficiently than humans, which is to do the mass data analysis.
I agree. And a lot of it comes to trust. I mean, you have to trust. We always think about the possibilities of it going wrong, but think about the possibilities of it going wrong with a human being. You could get people, and I'm not going to go into political viewpoints or anything like that, but you can get people in there that have their own personal bias. And maybe it's not about Maybe it's about what kind of flowers are better for a funeral and what kind of flowers are better for a wedding. And that bias could go into some sort of algorithm. And then people are, it's just, I think that everything in, I don't want to say moderation, but everything, if you apply it to the right, if you apply the right tool to the right problem, you're probably going to get good results. If you're applying these tools to things that there's an intrinsic quality to a person doing this, and maybe it's not intrinsic, maybe it is measurable, it's just you haven't measured it yet. I'm assuming they've measured all the productivity and all the abilities and the scalability of these people before they're going to say we're going to get rid of 90% of this team. But it doesn't really say that in there. It just says we're going to do this. So I'm presuming they're a Fortune 500 company. Why, they probably did their due diligence. I guess you got to trust and then see what happens. They have competitors. So if it doesn't work,
and again, it's better than doing nothing.
Yeah,
right.
That's true.
It's better than them saying that's an unsolvable problem and we really can't do it, and so therefore we should just stop innovating.
Yeah, that's not an option. Reading some of these things makes me really believe that we're like, I want to say, and someone has said, the AI will be bigger than the internet itself. That many in the space are saying it used to be, in fact, there was I was watching a conference video broadcast, and I don't recall who said it. It was either Altman or I think it was Altman. Maybe he said that the AI that they kept saying was 2 years out. Kept saying it's 2 years out. It's 2 years out. Every 2 years it was 2 years out. Is finally here, and the changes they expect from it are finally knocking on our doorstep, and that the abilities now are past the ability for it to do what it has to do are past now all the plans that we have ready to go. So they have a broad overhang of this stuff is good. This stuff, AI is going to be a productive tool way past everyone's thought process. And that's where we got to start thinking outside the box. I mean, you got to start thinking, I hate that term though, thinking outside the box. Like no one really thinks inside a little echo chamber, but you have to think in ways that break the mold. There is a mold, and there's a mold of hiring people, getting people in, getting them up to speed, educating. The white collar businesses, the white collar students that are coming out that would normally get that first job at a company and they would rise the ladder. Well, the ladder just is going to lose its first 5 rungs. You're not going to be able to get into that company until you have experience, and that's going to be really tough. I think that you're going to have to come from different avenues. It's going to be a really interesting market. I'm not sure, I've been around for a while. I've got a lot of experience and knowledge. So do you, Mario. If we had to go out and, look for a job right now, well, guess what? We have a skill set that we can package and we can fit into those upper echelons. We have a lot of knowledge. I wouldn't necessarily have a lot of wisdom, but I have a lot of knowledge. So, and these kids coming out of school, they're sharp, but if there's not a place for them to land, they've got to come up with the alternative path for those white collar, first job market. Yes, it may be 20%, but they've got to replace it. They got to backfill it with something that's going to be created out of it. We're good at, I think Mark Cuban even said, you're crazy to think that we're going to lose all these jobs because where those jobs go away, other jobs come in. So, and especially when you're dealing with people coming out of college, they've got a fresh mind, they're ready to go, they're ready to learn. they're ready to dive into their career. So I'm not as glass half or 20% empty as they are. I'm more, it's 80% full, and we're gonna backfill with all that. So I kind of share that with you now. I get your point.
Well, and I'll just say, like, for me in my career, one of the most expensive things to do is to take somebody right out of college and bring them into your company, because they don't understand anything about your company. They also don't understand basics of the business world, right? Like they can understand how to write an email, but they don't really understand how to decide who's on it and who's not. Like there's just so many facets of that just eat at your team to make sure that these people are able to function within your organization. Well, it's not a big leap to imagine that AI is what's going to bring people up to speed, because the AI is going to know everything about your company. It's going,
Right.
you can easily instruct it. And so imagine coming in right out of college and having this tool, this assistant sitting right there that can literally answer anything about this organization and how it functions and what its standard procedures are and what it's, how,
Yep.
like, it can do all of that, so that maybe that entry level person, once we all adapt, maybe they're 5 times more productive than they are in their first year than they are today.
And maybe it's not anything that they have to prompt. Maybe it's just baked into their process, and it
Right.
just tells them, "Hey, are you sure you want to send this? Because you didn't include 3 of the business leaders we normally would see on an email like this."
Yeah.
Oh,
Great
I
example.
guess I've
Right.
got to include them. Or why are you including the CEO on this email? You're just asking someone in the mailroom for something. It's like,
Yeah.
I think that those kind of overlays would be extremely helpful and help people do better. But then again, the AI also has to know, like you just said, how many people are documenting, going back to my data scientist, putting that data scientist hat on, how many people have accurate process and procedures? How many companies do you run into and you say, "Hey, I want to develop a tool and help you with this tool, but can you give me your process and procedure for that?" And they go, "Yeah, let me let you talk to this
Exactly.
person." And so you're not only are you building a tool, you're also building out their process map. And
That's right.
and it's not, and I'm not trying to shame anyone. There are, even the biggest and best of companies have a problem not just having a process, documented process, but keeping it updated. And so how is AI going to even be able to keep up with that, in the sense that AI has to have finite data to make decisions? If it's if you have these agentic AI tools out there, just making decisions, going through a loop process to present things for you, it has to know everything about it. And if it doesn't have the information, you're not going to be happy with the results. And you're going to want it to do things that it doesn't understand what to do, because you didn't do the base work. So cleaning up the database, making sure that all your data is clearly defined in there, making sure that your processes and procedures are documented, not just in someone's head or on their desktop, in the company Bible, your company manual. Everything has to be updated and kept updated. And that's the only way you're going to get the best out of AI. So,
And I'm going to drop a nugget. I made a reference last week to a newsletter called Per Aspera. And my son actually informed me that that's the second half of the Ad Astra, if you remember the movie, right?
yeah.
To the stars, right? It's Ad Astra Per Aspera, which is through hardship. So
Yeah.
this newsletter is all about digging really deep. And it goes completely.
Is that what you're
different
sharing
direction.
right now? I just want to make sure
Yeah, and it goes completely a different direction, and talks about the need for the comeback of tribal knowledge, right?
Yeah.
People who just through experience know how to do things and can communicate and mentor and do everything else. And how does that all fit into what we just talked about, right? This whole idea of being able to make people productive day one, so they have an orientation of what you do, how you do it, and how they fit into the equation. We'll share this link in the summary when we put it out with the.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. That's like sharing. A lot of people do the whole legacy videos. I did some for my family, so that you can share who you were, what you were about, so that when you end up leaving this earth, that they have something to look back and say, oh, okay, these are lessons of life. So those things are great. And that's very similar to like a grandma's recipes, right? You know how good her biscuits and gravy were, but you don't know how she made the gravy. Like, you know that biscuits and gravy is good. You don't know her secret way she did it. Tribal knowledge is the secret sauce that AI is going to have a little bit. I'm not saying it's not impossible. I just think it's going to be a bit of a hurdle for it to get past a lot of that tribal knowledge in some of these companies.
And just to now hit our movie reference for the episode,
Yes.
the movie Nona's, which is a great story about the guy who started a restaurant.
I just watched it.
I thought it was really a mediocre movie. I love the premise and everything else. I found the movie to be.
I was expecting more from Vince Vaughn, but I love the storyline. Yeah. And then they show the real.
Is fantastic, and it's a real life story. Like
Yeah.
they showed the real life story, and the guy,
See,
really
I'm thinking Vince Vaughn from Back to School and Wedding Crashers and all that.
He's mellowing out.
Wait,
He's
he was in
mellowing
Wedding
out
Crashers, is that right?
He's mellowing out just like you.
Oh yeah, I'm real mellow. Well, I think that's going to do it for us for today.
We went long as usual.
Yeah, and I think we settled on our exit, which is, I'm Kyle Myers,
And I'm Mario Benedetto.
and this has been the AI Riff.
See ya.
Wires hum like whispers in the deep dark night. Shadows dancing strange under neon light. Digits spinning fast like a gambler's hand. The clock chimes change, it's the new command. Oh, the future calls with a voice so clear. A melody of progress in every ear. No turning back, the wheels in motion. A tide of cold like the endless ocean. Binary prophets ride in fading streams. Data flows like rivers fueling all our dreams. Simple or savvy, it's all the same path. Under skies of innovation, we redraw the map. Oh, the future calls with a voice so clear. A melody of progress in every ear. No turning back, the wheels in motion. A tide of cold like the endless ocean. Set the rhythm to the beat of change we sing. Every click and hum a key that rings. A revolution, quiet, but it's vast. Building empires where echoes of futures cast. Oh, the future calls with a voice so clear. A melody of progress in every ear. No turning back, the wheels in motion. A tide of cold like the endless ocean.